Next, before we get
Yeah,
into the let's
rest
get
in
into.
peace, DMX, man. That Friday, it went from one of the best days ever because Queen Elizabeth II's husband slash cousin passed away.
Third cousin.
Third cousin, still cousin, passed away, and Black Twitter, Irish Twitter, all came together like Voltron, like a Power Rangers Megazord, and was cracking mad jokes on the old racists, and we were enjoying ourselves. And then things got very tragic because the one, the only, Yonkers' very own, the leader of the Rough Riders, Dark Man X, aka DMX, tragically passed away. He was in a coma for the past week due to a drug overdose because we know DMX had his demons and he was very vocal about his demons. Okay, he never shied away from his demons. He always spoke up and spoke out on his addictions, and he spoke on, I believe, Talib Kweli's podcast about how he actually became addicted to crack. It was because one of his when he was young, I believe like 13, 14, he started rapping with this older MC, right? And so the older MC, he gave DMX a blunt, but he laced it with crack. And he gave that to a 13-year-old kid. So that's what started his addictions, unfortunately. So it's just very tragic. Fortunately, we got to see DMX versus Snoop Dogg in one of the best versus battles of 2020. It was one of my favorites. I remember thinking that Snoop Dogg was gonna wipe DMX, but then DMX came back heavy in that second half. That second half, just his 10 songs, it's just started. He just started going crazy, and like I started sweating because of how much I was dancing to DMX records. Because DMX, I don't know if y'all remember this, at one point in time, Bash, and DMX was popular, way more popular, if that, than Jay Z at one point, where he
Yeah,
sold more.
early 2000s. That
Yeah,
was I think, as I remember in the hip hop documentaries, they'll call it the post Tupac era.
it was the post Tupac era. It was post 1996 when Pac passed away, and then post 1997 when Biggie passed away. Because post 1997, Hove came out with Heart Not Life, Life and Times of Sean Carter Volume 2, and Heart Not Life. I think that was a record that went diamond. I think that was one of my first records that I remember as a child because I had to have been like 3 or 4 years old. But then simultaneously at that time in '98, DMX came out two back-to-back albums, both went number one, and from then on he came out with five albums, all went number one, all went platinum, which is something that hasn't been done back then. It hasn't been done, and it still hasn't been done since like that. To be honest, it hasn't. And during that time, DMX sold more than Jay Z. He was way more popular than Jay Z, and he had more of a mainstream appeal than Jay Z at one point. If you remember Woodstock '99, you saw DMX performance and just a sea of people. When the Rough Riders anthem came on, everyone was singing it. Everyone was mosh pitting. Everyone was running wild. Um, yeah, man. DMX is one of those few rappers that was able to be authentically himself, and that's something I admire, right? There's few, far in between rappers that actually get paid to be themselves, and they get the love from the people from being authentically themselves. The only person I can think of off rip right now, it would be Snoop Dogg, but DMX is definitely that person who just, wherever he goes, he just gets the amount of love and respect because people love DMX's authenticity. See, that's the thing with hip hop a lot of the time, or rap music. Um, Sometimes music nowadays, it has a similar sound, it has a similar flow or whatever, but you know, DMX, you can always tell who he is. You can tell his music, how his music is different from what was going on at that time, or hell, how his music was still was still being taken notice because DMX had a large fan base. DMX had a dedicated fan base. I think I did pretty well on that. So rest in peace, DMX. One of my favorites growing up.
Yeah, what songs did you like? Because I remember getting into DMX. Like listening to DMX is one thing, but like going back and listen to his discography. Think I used to watch a lot of his music videos on BET
Mhm.
whenever they showed, and pretty much most of the other networks. but one of the songs came out, Lord Give Me a Sign.
Lord, give me a sign.
And
Yeah.
I was just obsessed with that song because the energy was just like it was rough, but yet a very peaceful song. And this is like definitely post Jesus Walks, so it gave me off that same energy. So I
Hmm.
remember like listening to that song all the time. I was like, all right, maybe I could listen to other singles because at the time I was not listening to albums, listening to singles, and I
Right.
was listening to every single. Of course, Rough Rider Anthem. I heard that song a million times, but I couldn't put a face to it.
Hmm. Well, with the Rough Riders anthem, right? To me, and I don't
Hmm.
know if I'm right about this at all, but to me that was like the first time I actually saw black bikers, because black bikers isn't something that I'm used to, or I would say, hood culture isn't really used to seeing, or the black community is used to seeing. But once I saw the Rough Riders anthem, and you saw all these like black dudes and women just riding around in motorcycles and ATVs and popping wheelies and stuff, I feel like that was like the real start of black motorcycles.
Yeah,
And
I
like,
think X is going to give it to you was like the music video that I
mm,
remember watching.
I remember Party Up in Here, because similar to you, I grew up around that time where I only really cared about singles, and one of my favorite singles was
Yeah, we're like
with him.
10. We
Yeah.
didn't understand the concept of an album.
Right, yeah, yeah. But as I got older, I definitely loved the Damien trilogy. That's one of my favorites, where DMX befriends basically the devil. I think his biblical songs are pretty poetic, and his songs definitely create this like vivid imagery of mortality and spirituality and stuff like that. But as singles go, "What's My Name" was one of my favorites. Of course, I liked like the organ piano in the beginning. "Where We Be," that was one of my favorites, because one of my favorite games growing up was Street
Oh
Hoops
yeah,
2.
we're yeah.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. See, it's like yeah, very yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, there was a time where all I could listen to was him, and just like you, I was just checking out, watching documentaries, reading, watching interviews, getting to know him more. It's like wow, this guy is a real human being.
Yeah.
Because I always make the joke when talking about Kanye. It's like, oh yeah, of course I gravitate towards him. He's a real person. You can. There's a point where Usher was my favorite artist because Confessions like a great album,
We're
but
gonna
I
get
had no
into
idea
Usher
who the man
later.
was.
True, but we're gonna get into Usher later.
Yeah, I had no idea who that man was.
Mm-hmm.
Like you watch his interviews, I could not explain to you the idea of that guy. But DMX, the reason he was easy to connect with because he was so open.
Mm-hmm.
He was telling everybody his. It's hard as an artist to tell people your pain.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing other artists commenting on it, like why they love DMX because they have pain similar to him, but they will never talk about it. They will never get so detailed the way he did, and it just connects to him even more because he's not. I could say braver, but he's so strong in a way where he's able to kind of reveal more about himself for the public to know. It's like this is what's going on with me, and this is how it started, and this is how it's going. So
Right,
yeah,
and it's
very
admirable.
very strong person. Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a favorite DMX moment?
Favorite DMX moments.
It doesn't have to be like any music, or like it could just be a clip of something he said, or whatever.
I've been seeing a bunch of them. I
Mm-hmm.
do remember like a random moment. The first moment that I remember was watching Chris Rock's top five.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of Chris Rock's best movie, and Chris Rock got arrested.
Oh yeah.
DMX was inside. He was like spinning game on him. It's like, what you doing?
And I think he
Yeah,
was singing "Smile" too,
yeah, yeah.
but he did it in his own DMX way. "Smile, though your heart is breaking." What? That was
Yeah.
great.
But he also has like one thing that made him very interesting was his covers,
Yeah.
his album covers. Because I
Mm-hmm.
always like, I'm not too crazy about artists rap covers, but I thought his was like very graphic and real. Especially trying to recall the album that was all covered in blood. Yeah,
In My
um,
Flesh.
yeah, flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood.
Yeah.
That's like the most iconic cover
Right.
of hip
Definitely.
hop ever. Like once you get in that pose, you already know what it's reference to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, much respect. R.I.P. DMX.
R.I.P. DMX. I just want to say this. I rewatched Belly again. It's still not a good movie. Sorry. It's not good. It's okay. But hey, the opening credits, like the opening scene, it's still iconic as hell. All right. You got Soul to Soul, Back to Life playing in the background. You got DMX and Nas going up in the club, then they had the ultraviolet on, and the dark lights on, and everyone's blue and crap. All right, that's still iconic. I will always watch that first beginning scene. After that, no, the movie's horrible, but I still love you, DMX. My personal favorite DMX moments is one, his rendition of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I think we played it one year for December. That's one of my favorite moments. The other is the one that I sent you, and it was I think he was in a car, right? And he was informed that Lil B had an album out called I'm Gay, and I saw he had his reaction of like, he was like, "Yo, dog, you serious?" And
I remember that one.
that was one of my favorite DMX moments, just because of his reaction and his face. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
So with that, once again, rest in peace to Darkman X, DMX, gone but never forgotten. You will always be remembered. And with that, song of the week this week, Bastion, please take it away.